surprise at what you might find. Join the gathering, light all the fires, and we'll tell you about tricksters, outlaws, fairies, and thieves. Nothing is quite what it seems. Highwaymen, pirates, dragons, and crows. Nothing is quite what you know. Oh, nothing is quite what you know.
Hello, my friends. Hello, hello. I hope you guys are ready for some storytelling, for some old yarns from the folklore and mythology of this island, sometimes called Merlin's Enclosure, or the land of Albion. So, what a great talk that was about glowworms. I feel that my head is fizzing with phosphorescent knowledge. So we've got two stories for you guys today, and both of them are from just across the water in Wales. And because this is a great wildlife park, both of our stories today have a nature theme. And the first story, it's called The Cauldron of Ceridwen. And when Tam's got her shoe off, the birth of Taliesin.
Fill a cauldron of beauty, a cauldron of wisdom. Fill a cauldron of love with herbs from this land. Stoke up the fire for a year and a day. Hey, hey, oh, made for my son, stole by peasant hands.
Long ago, long ago, in the deep time, in the myth time, in the aboriginal dreaming of a place called Britain, there was a cunning woman. She lived deep in the dark forest. Some call her a witch, some call her a sorceress, some call her the great mother goddess herself, and her name was Ceridwen. And I cannot tell you how old she was, but she was older than the older than the older than the old. Some say she was older than the earth itself. Now Ceridwen, she lived in a hut in the deep, dark forest with her husband Tegid the Bald, and they had two children together. The first one, she was beauty and light and kindness. She was a joy to be around. She was just pure light and wonder, such kindness, always cared what you had to say. She was pure light. And they had a son. Now, all the positive qualities their daughter had, he had none of them. In fact, he only had vices. He was ugly as sin, he was thick as mince, and he was horrible, unkind. His name was Morfran, which means the sea crow. His feet were too big, his head was too big, his neck was all thin and lolled about on his thin, scrawny, pale shoulders, and his eyes were black from lid to lid. That was why he was given the nickname Avagdi, which means utter darkness. Now this would not do. This young boy, Avagdi, could not grow up in this world of men. This was King Arthur's time, a time of knights and princes. He would not do well in the world, but his mother was a powerful witch, and she knew how to do great magic. Now, she could not make her son beautiful. No, even her magic couldn't do that. But she could make him powerful, wise beyond belief. To do this, she would brew a potion of Arwen, of knowledge and inspiration. Now, you need to know a few things about this potion. First, it needs to be brewing for a year and a day. Second, it takes great art to make this potion. You know, all the special ingredients from the forest floor, collected at special phases of the moon, all these special ingredients, you know, eye of newt and glowworm placed within this cauldron. And the third thing you need to know about this cauldron is that all the knowledge and inspiration of this cauldron is kept in the first 3 drops, and the rest is poison. Luckily, she had help. She had staff, you know. She had 2 slaves. The first one, his name was Morda. He was an old man, and it was his job just to stir the cauldron, stir the cauldron. And then she had another slave. His name was Gwion Bach. Now, Gwion's task was to collect the kindling and keep that cauldron on a constant simmer. You know, he couldn't let it boil or go too cold, or it would be spoiled. So the months rolled by, and the months rolled by, and the months rolled by, until a whole year was complete, and the cauldron would be ready in 24 hours' time. Now, Ceridwen, she went out with her sickle into the forest. She had a few last herbs and ingredients to collect for the cauldron. She left Gwion Bach in charge. Do not mess up the cauldron for my son, she said to little Gwion. And off she went, leaving Gwion, you know, a little bit frightened. So Gwion was gathering the kindling for the cauldron, and then tragedy struck. That old slave stirring the cauldron, blind and old as he was, he drew his last breath and died right there and then, leaving Gwion with 2 tasks. He had to stir the cauldron and get the kindling. So he built the fire up a little bit too high. It was bubbling, and he was stirring away, stirring away, stirring away. And then a bubble of the cauldron bubbled up and popped, and 3 drops of potion sailed through the air and landed on Gwion Bach's thumb. And he burnt his thumb, and instinctively he put his thumb in his mouth. And his whole mind opened. He drank the 3 drops of all the knowledge in the world, and suddenly he knew everything. He knew everything there is to know about glowworms. He knew everything about all the phases of the moon, about all the civilizations of human history. He could see through the forest and see all the towns and cities. He saw the thoughts of every living thing, all the trees in the forests. He could see all his own past lives stretching back behind him. He could see through the woods, and there, about a mile away, he could see Ceridwen, and he could see her thoughts, and he could see that she was going to kill him when this potion was done, and he could see that she could feel him watching her, and she looked up and locked eyes with him across the void, and he thought, oh bugger. And Ceridwen, like a tornado of crows and evil, tore through the forest and ripped the walls off that hut and towered above little Gwion and was just about to tear him in half. But in that moment, the cauldron split in 2 and spilt its poison on the ground. And little Gwion, who could see into the future, saw it happen before it happened. And he got up, and all the poison spread on the floor. And then Ceridwen stepped over it and was about to tear off little Gwion's head, just like a spider eating a glowworm. I'm just going to keep returning to glowworms throughout the story. I don't know why. But Gwion had a thought in that moment. He saw the forest between Ceridwen's legs, and he thought, if only I could become a hare. And just as he thought those words, he became a hare and sped away through Ceridwen's legs into the forest and away. He was free. He was free. He would live as a hare in the forest forevermore. Not so fast, little Gwion Bach. Because if Gwion could transform into a hare, then Ceridwen the witch could become what chases a hare. A dog. She became a dog, chasing after that hare, a hound, chasing after Ceridwen, chasing after Gwion through the labyrinth of roots and trees, chasing that little hare, Gwion. But Gwion was quick. He could turn faster, faster, faster. And he was thinking he was escaping this hound behind him. But then Gwion Bach came to a great river running through the forest. He was stuck. He had nowhere to go. Oh, bugger, he thought, if only I could swim. And in that moment, little Gwion Bach, leaping as a hare into the stream, turned into What swims? A fish, a salmon, swimming silver in the water, swimming upstream because salmon swim upstream towards the waterfall, and he was swimming up it. But if Gwion Bach could become a salmon, then Ceridwen the witch could become an otter, and become an otter she did, and leapt into the stream after little Gwion the salmon. She was going to eat that little salmon, and that little salmon was trembling up the waterfall and leapt into the sky. And little Gwion Bach thought, if only I could fly. And in that moment, little Gwion Bach became a bird, a little sparrow, swift on its little beating wings, flying up and up and up into the starlit sky. But if Gwion Bach could become a little bird, a little sparrow, then Ceridwen could become a hawk, soaring on wings of death, wheeling after little Ceridwen the sparrow, and they were flying in the sky around each other, that hawk gaining on little Gwion the sparrow, who was swifter on the wing, and his little sparrow heart was growing tired, and there, little Gwion with his sparrow eyes saw a clearing in the great forest, and there was huts, a little village, a village of humans, and in the middle of that hut was a great barn where all the grain must be being stored for harvest time. And little Gwion soared down in a sparrow form through a gap in the slats of that barn, and then inside he saw all the grain on the threshing floor, and he turned himself in the air into a single grain, a single piece of wheat, and fell on a mountain of other grains. She would never find him here. Ceridwen the hawk landed, turned back into her true form, opened the doors of that barn, saw all the grain lined up there, and she thought, there you are, my boy. And she turned herself into a black hen, a chicken. And she began to eat the grains, one after the other, eating all the grains, thousands and thousands of grains. Look, she was a magic chicken. She could eat all of the grains, until there was just one left. It was little Gwion Bach, the grain of wheat. And Ceridwen said, there you are, dear. And she ate him up, swallowing him, and turned herself back into her true form and said, now I've got you. Then, with a terrible, terrible realization, Ceridwen, biology be damned, realized she was pregnant. Little Gwion Bach, the grain of wheat, had turned himself into a little baby inside her womb. And now she would have to wait 9 months to kill him. But she waited 9 months. Oh, she waited, thinking of the ways she would kill her baby boy when he was born. But when the time came, she gave birth to this beautiful, beautiful little baby boy. And she couldn't kill him. It was her own son. So you know what she did? She put him in a basket, just like Moses, and put him in a river, wrapped in cloth, in a little basket of reeds, and set him sailing down the stream. And little Gwion Bach, the baby, floated down the river, down the river, down the river, out of the myth time, out of the dreaming, and into history, hundreds of years ago, out into the open sea, where there was a prince fishing. His name was Prince Elfin, Prince of Aberystwyth, and he was a very lazy boy. And his mother and father wanted him to have a son. And he was fishing, and he thought, I found a very big fish. I'm sorry about my Welsh accent. He pulled it out of the water, and there was a little baby boy with shining eyes. And he thought, I've fished myself a son. And he took that boy home to his mother and father, who must be very, very proud of him. But a funny thing happened. As that boy came closer to the royal palace on the beach, he grew. He grew and grew and grew until he was about this tall. About sort of 10, 11 years old-ish. And they both walked into the royal courts. And the king of Aber said to his son, what have you got there, my boy? And the child, the divine child with shining eyes like the dawn was bursting out of his head, said, I've been many things. I've been a sword in the hand in battle. I've been a string on a harp, a word of the poets in a book. I've been a star in the great void of the sky. I've been an eel in the deep water, a salmon in the pool. I've been a sparrow swift on the wing. And now I stand here before you in the shape I'm in today. And my name is Taliesin of the Shining Brow. And I will be your storyteller.
Fill a cauldron of beauty, a cauldron of wisdom. Fill a cauldron of love with herbs from this land. Stoke up the fire for a year and a day. Hey, hey, oh, made for my son, stole by peasant hands. I come, you change, I change. We end up in the grain, and I'll see you again in 9 months to the day. Sail my beautiful boy away. Sail my beautiful boy away. Oh, Taliesin, don't take my stories to the grave.
Here is another story from Wales, and it's a story about dragons. And it's the story of why there's a red dragon on the flag of Wales. So this story is called King Lludd, or King Lludd, and the two dragons.
Two beings in flight, circling. One is day, the other night. And it begins. One brings ice, the other fire. We wonder if they'll ever tire. And every beltane sunrise, the plague on the land has returned. They scream their curses. We lose everything that we know.
Long ago, long ago, in another Britain, in a deep, deep Britain, not the same as this one, there was a great, great king, and his name was King Lludd, or as the Welsh would say, King Lludd, but let's stick with Lludd. Now, King Lludd was a great king, a noble king, a wise king. Now, King Lludd, he founded the city of London that still bears his name. In fact, he's buried under Ludgate. King Lludd was a prosperous ruler, and because he was so kind and benevolent, the land prospered. The glowworms were in great state of numbers. All of the endangered species were flourishing. The economy was soaring by 6.2%, and there were no tariffs. It was great. But sometime into King Lludd's reign, a plague fell upon the island of Britain. 3 plagues, actually, but this story only concerns us with one of them. The plague was this. Every May Eve, every 1st of May, every Beltane, as they say in the old language, a terrible scream burst out of the land. You could hear it everywhere. It burst out of every fireplace, out of every hearth, a terrible screech. And whoever heard this screech had to cover their ears Leaves would fall from the trees and shiver and wither. Fish would die in the ponds. Glowworms wouldn't find a mate whenever this screech, I'm overdoing this now with the glowworms. This screech would bring famine on the island of Britain. So this would happen year after year after year on the same date. Every 1st of May, a great screech would emanate across the land of Britain, and people were starting to starve, and King Lludd knew he had to do something. Luckily, King Lludd had a brother, a younger brother, who was very clever. His name was Llefelys, and he was king of France. Lludd was king of Britain, Llefelys was king of France. So King Lludd thought, I know what to do. I'll go and ask my brother what I should do about this plague that has fallen upon Britain. So off he went in a great fleet of ships with brocaded coloured sails and flags fluttering in the breeze over the English Channel towards the coast of France, or Gaul as it was known then. And King Llefelys, king of France, his fleet came from the other bank, and they met in the middle of the sea. And King Llefelys, his ship, and King Lludd's ship sailed out, and they said, ahoy there! Hey, brother, nice to meet you. Hello there, chum. Now, King Lludd was going to explain what was wrong, the plague, but he was suspicious that there might be people listening, maybe elves or fairies might listen to the dilemma. So what they would do this. Their 2 ships were bobbing in the water next to each other, and they would communicate via a long brass horn. And one king would speak in the horn, and the other would listen in the other end, yeah? And then they would swap it round, and they would communicate that way, so no one else could hear. There was a problem, though, because in the middle of that horn, there was a sort of goblin, a kind of demon, a lesser sprite, and it was living inside the horn. So whenever King Lludd would try and speak to his brother Llefelys, all Llefelys would hear is, you've got smelly toes, and I don't like your wife, and your ears are silly, and your trousers are rubbish, or whatever. And he thought, that's very strange, but he realised the problem. He realised there must be some demon inside the horn. So he got a stoup of wine and poured the wine in the horn and flushed that goblin out. And it went and plopped in the sea and was gone. And that's the end of that very strange part of this story, which I have to include because it's in the story. So that obstacle to their communication removed, King Lludd told his brother, King Llefelys, what the problem was, about the great screech emanating from the land. And King Llefelys knew exactly what to do. He said, aha, I've seen this before. I know what your problem is. The problem is, you've got a problem with dragons. You've got a dragon, your dragon, the dragon of the island of Britain that lives beneath the earth and in the sky and in the land and in the people. Your dragon is being attacked by another dragon from far, far away. So you need to trap these dragons because they're causing you grief. What you need to do is this. So if you've ever got a problem with dragons in your life, this is the solution. You need to find the heart, the very center. In this case, the very center of the island of Britain. And then you need to dig a big hole. You need to fill the hole with mead. And then you need to cover that hole with silk. And you will trap those 2 dragons. And you need to bury them somewhere out of sight. That's how you deal with dragons, by the way. So King Lludd thanked his brother and sailed back to Britain. And he set his druids and his wizards and his magicians and his geomancers to find the very center of Britain. So they walked north, they walked south, they walked east, they walked west. And they found the very center of Britain, which, as we all know, is Oxford, apparently. I don't know why. Again, it's in the story. Maybe the ones walking north had really long legs. I don't know. So Oxford hadn't been built yet. It's about the 6th century BC, right? So Oxford's not there. There's just green hills and forests and trees. It's a bit like this. And he got his men to dig a huge pit in the ground, right where the center of Oxford is today. And then he got a huge silver cauldron made. and sunk into the ground. Huge silver cauldron. And he filled it. He filled it with all the mead. Mead is like honey wine. I'm sure you all know how important bees are. Filled it with all the mead, so much mead, gallons, barrels of mead. It would drown an army. There was so much mead in this cauldron. Then he got all the silk in the island of Britain stitched together, and a huge, huge bit of silk spread over that hole, and waited. It was Beltane. It was the 1st of May, just, a week or so ago now. It's this time of year. The time had approached. All the druids and chieftains were in a great ring around that hole, and they were waiting. It was a day like this. It was sunny, the sun moving behind the clouds. The sun moved up in the sky. It was at the very high. It was right where it is now, just up there. And silence descended. And up there was not a plane, but a falcon, a bird of prey, a hawk, circling, circling, circling. And everyone was just looking up at this hawk, watching, thinking something is about to happen. And sure enough, out of nowhere, a crow, a black crow, dive-bombed that hawk, boom, like that. And then everything shifted. The whole air became electric. It's like the whole world just tilted on its axis. That crow and that hawk battling in the sky. And then there, out of the bushes, a boar, a great pig, burst out of a thicket, being chased by dogs and hunters. And then that boar, instead of running, turned and charged down the nearest dog, and they were fighting. And there on the hill, there was a great stag with horns fighting a wolf. And there on the ground, an adder fighting a stoat. And here in the stream, a pike and an otter locked in combat. And yes, my friends, here in the bush was the spider and the glowworm locked in mortal combat. All these animals were fighting. All these animals were fighting all around King Lludd and his druids, in their minds, in the sky, on the earth. And then all these creatures coalesced in the sky. They turned into 2 serpents in the sky, 2 dragons. One, I tell you, was red. The other dragon was white. The white dragon breathed ice on the land, blowing winter, turning all the rivers to ice and snow. The red dragon breathed fire, torching the whole hillside, setting forests ablaze. The red dragon and the white, they fought one another, coiling in the sky, fighting and fighting and fighting, coiling down, until they both landed, exhausted, on that sheet of silk, and sunk down, down, down into a cauldron of mead. And they drunk up all that mead. Those 2 dragons drunk up every last drop of that mead, and exhausted, they fell asleep. And if anyone wants to know what dragons truly are, those 2 dragons turned into 2 little pigs. One pink, one pale. Pigs in blankets. So King Lludd and his druids wrapped those little piglets up in silk sotted with mead, and they were put into 2 great stone chests that were made, sealed, and they were placed in a great wagon, and they were driven west along the M4 motorway, past Bristol, over the Severn Bridge, and up into the mountains of North Wales, where we now call Snowdonia National Park, but in that time was called Dinas Emrys. And those dragons were sealed deep beneath the mountain, and great stones and earths were buried. And as soon as those dragons were buried, life returned to Britain. Birds flew in the sky. Glowworms multiplied, but they did. The economy grew by 6%. It was amazing. Salmon leapt in the streams. The corn grew again. There was laughter. The dragons, my friends, are drunk. Mead-coloured blossoms appeared. Somebody please tell those bloody druids that joy and summer is here.
Sleep, sleep, little dragons, creep, creep underground. Sleep, little dragon, peace be upon us all.
Thank you very much, my friends, for listening. Sorry for spitting on you if I did. Praise be to the druids and the glowworms. Enjoy the rest of your day. Praise be to the dragons.